So let's start with a couple definitions. Population control, the practice of artificially altering the rate of growth of a human population to the rules of a given society, state, or social system. Artificially altering the rate of growth. Pretty broad. Contrasted with social control, the regulation of individual or group behavior in an attempt to gain conformity and compliance. So I might conflate these words from time to time because there's a great interplay between the two. Altering the rate of growth of a human population within certain rules. So, when again, master race, mastering population control, we want to get that worldview into our heads here um, uh, of the class of people that fancy themselves in the art of human husbandry. Social control, the regulation of individual and group behavior in an attempt to gain conformity and compliance. So, biopolitics and population planning, the practice of artificially altering the rate of growth of a human population, we're talking about here with planning. From the 1950s, concerns about its effects on poverty. And again, that's what Foucault is talking about. This type of biopolitics begins really with the advent of Darwin, but it plays out with this mother state sort of fascination, which in fact is a false face behind, a deeper, you'd say you have to dig this into from Foucault. I argue there's an esoteric Foucault, and the secrets of empire have to do um, with almost a transcendental level of control over the human population. But it does so with things like Foucault will say, concerns about birth rates and poverty and ameliorating pain and the suffering in the world as a face of this agenda. It leads to efforts to reduce the population growth rates. And oh, you know, this is a huge topic that elites, oligarchs are into population control. I'm not going to labor to make, that point, about Ted Turner or Bill Gates. And okay, if you're here, you probably have figured that part out, I'm going to assume. Um, I want to get to the apotheosis of this. I mean, what do they really think they're doing? And are they, to what extent are they conscious of the connection between population control and population planning using social control? How does that lead to apotheosis? Because their fascination with this herd, they need it to get, this image around the rotunda. They sort of celebrated almost this pantheon for some, the pagan bent. We know that there's others that see themselves as a messianic population. A couple ideas in the mix here. Just a fascination. I want to dig through the esoteric biopolitical part of that, really dig into that in relation to this idea of apotheosis. Somehow you manage the population in order to achieve apotheosis. Let's just get into that connection a little bit, okay? So, population planning may be used one or more of the following practices, although there are other methods. So, these are just part and parcel of being human, sometimes regulating, contraceptions and rhythms and so forth. So it's very benign at some level. Abortions, not so much. The one child policy in China, can you imagine that, this entire population of people complied to that? where others can see that policy and would choose to resist. That's the biopolitics we're talking about. And it's obsession, definitely since Thomas Malthus, um, Anglican clergy, very early 19th century, was just, beginning of the population bomb. Never proves true. The numbers are always funny. It has to do, just like with all their theories of science, with their esoteric bent. You know, the world, henny penny. And by the 1840s, it's going to just explode. Population bomb of the 1970s, and just the clear global associations, these population reduction. It's a funny idea that lurks, to those that are awake, that the elite are fascinated with this idea of massive population reduction. And how does this fit in with apotheosis and any other end times narratives? So the effects, those methods, from contraception to abortion, um, to genocide, do so at different times for different regions, and it's certainly going to reflect, the ethos of the time and the, um, I guess, the culture of the population being controlled. From the ancient times through the medieval. And usually, when we talk about things like birth control, especially related to sort of this plan that's always been out there, that's both exoteric and exoteric, which is Plato's idea, we have that. And the narrative always kind of, especially when we look around um, eugenics, is that, Plato put it out there, and it really kind of picks up again with Malthus and the advent of Darwinism, and there would be a certain uh, Neoplatonic agenda that would attach new methods of science and biology into the ancient plan. Plato thought society arrangements for mating. So, I don't know how much I want to hash out Plato's worldview, but it's the triangle. There's a guardian class, and everybody is, in biopolitical terms, everybody is fashioned from this regime of power into being a particular kind of people. They comply with it. And, if this idea is new to you, it's all about the guardians, how the guardians control everything else, and who they allow, to come into these marriages and repopulate, and kind of the deception involved. And like, there's a lottery and everybody has a chance. And if you're led, it's a type of alchemy there. You could become a gold, or let people maybe think they are, but it's a rigged system. So the oligarchical ruling, sort of playbook is out here right now, that they are obsessed. They don't want you to have the freedom to reproduce yourself. Okay, they want to be able to control that with the facade of democracy that we have. um, Softer methods uh, of influence have to be used. The guardian class, what's interesting about this, they're the elites. In this world, we have these guardian classes. That's what we're talking about, the oligarchs. But Plato, he never says who controls the guardian class, because they have to be programmed. So there's got to be this, and Plato doesn't discuss it. It's the big hidden hand that's here. Who guards the guardians? Who programs them? And um, I guess the reference I would go to here, and I can maybe pick this up, but Charles Galton Darwin, and his idea of the next millennial, his idea of evolution, i.e., a form of apotheosis, that at some point, in order to use this alchemy to create this apotheosis, he was considering the ruling class of the future, when we get into these new genetic human beings, when we're going to turn a corner in evolution and become Crimeas, or I guess truly meat puppets that have lost our soul in some kind of deal to merge with technology, and the age of the robots that, we're hearing about every day. Um, and he would say that there needs to be this class. And of course, he's doing it in reference to Plato and the ruling elite that he was part of and the agendas behind that. But it's almost an honest revelation that he has, is that this class, as it would be with robots, as it was with Plato, they'd have to be like wild animals. So everybody else is tamed, but the people at top are untamed. And maybe part of this is their tradition, their secret of empire, which is to be beyond good and evil. Affinity toward sodomy, as I believe what Foucault was thinking about when he's talking about the true secret of empire, and the esoteric aspects to that practice, and the obvious intergenerational aspects of that practice. So we've thrown quite a bit into this stew here, but once you get on Plato, it's hard not to. So when Plato's talking about reproduction and social control and the connection of those two, what does it mean to be wild? There are these people that I think might be sacrificed in the act of apotheosis,